Welcome back everybody, my name is Ochiniwa, I'm a Twitch streamer and from time to time I do some YouTube videos. So here is part 3 of my explanation of how to do a MAM in Shapez 2. In part 1 we've examined the detail of the wiring and the signals, how to decompose a shape into its elements and then see how a MAM could work. In the second part we then approached the fact of how to sort out the elements and produce something out of the shapes, and in this one we eventually will now add to the 4 basic shapes pinning. So that's a specific process of a additional step in the timeline of the game. So at one stage you will need to have some pins. Now this video will address how to do that. In the next video I will then address the crystals. Without further ado, let's jump into the easy solution of how to do it. It is pretty straightforward. The only thing you need to do is add an additional shape. So we have the squares, the circles, the wedges, the stars, and eventually we have pins. So if we look at this, basically I will treat the pin as a normal shape and it will just be added to the MAM. So if you have understood how a 4-layer or 5-layer colored MAM is working, which I've addressed in my previous video, then you will have not necessarily a problem to add the pins, because you just add a 5th type of pin, do some small adjustments which I go through in this video, and then have a working MAM with pins. But the first step is how to create these pins. So let me quickly go through a standard process of how to do it. It's not the only one. I've seen and I've thought about other ones, but this one seems to be at this stage of the game pretty easy accessible. So let me walk you through that one. So I've just set up this small extraction here to give you an idea about how this works. So the first principle which you need to understand about pinning is the following. So if you pin something, what the system would basically do, he will take any shape and he will then put a pin below. So here we have the shape that comes in and here we have the shape that comes out. So the pins in this specific machine actually come from the below, which makes it actually pretty difficult to integrate into an existing MAM. So what you need to do is isolate these 4 pins. So that's the first thing you need to know. Now the second thing you need to know is that if you pin something, he will add a pin. Now if you pin that one immediately again, he will add 2 pins and so on and so forth. And then at one stage, the upper layer will be destroyed. So you end up with 4 pins in the normal mode and with 5 pins in the insane mode. So once you have these 4 pins, what you can do is cut them in 2. So here I cut them and I rotate them. So I have here 4 pins only on one side. And the next step is pretty straightforward. I will take these 4 pins. Let me take that here. There they go. So they will go around here and I will be dropping an additional 2 layers onto this. So what will happen is that there are already 4 layers. So he's theoretically destroying these whole shape, but he will keep the pins. So the pins down here will not be destroyed. Let's look at this in slow motion. There they come. So here he falls down. So the upper layer is destroyed, but the 2 pins remain. So out comes a shape with 2 pins. So the only thing I need to do now is cut this off and just keep these 2 pins, which I basically do here. And here we end up with a 4-pin shape, which is just being fed through here. And then, yeah, I recut it here, but that's irrelevant. So, okay. So the only thing then we need is this 4-layer pin, and then we are actually on the safe side. I've done the hole here on a 1 layer. So that's a 4 layers in. So there's a full shape coming in, and at the end there are a 90 shapes per minute, 4 pins. Now why only 90? Because we basically cut off half of it and then we basically destroy one half, or we recycle them. So let me basically here empty this and then walk you through a particularity of this particular build that you can think of. So this is being fed in. Now the issue is I don't have at this stage these shapes here, so they are being fed in on the medium level. So let's go to this medium level. So I'm gonna take this shape here and feed that in. So one goes here, one here, one here, and one here. So as soon as they come in, the shapes will start producing. Let's fast forward. And then feed in here. Quick fast forward. So they seem to be full also. So let's take these away. There we go. These here can be taken away. They are not needed. So here we basically have now a production of, well, this will take a bit of time before it basically ends up using up. Okay, there we go. Now we have 90, 90, 90. So what is it that I actually did here is, you see in this process, I will actually end up with this shape again. So if I delete it here, you will see I will have the 4-layer shape, but I end up with this shape again. So I can actually recycle it. It goes in here and then comes out and out here again. I could delete it or I could recycle it. And that is basically what I do here, is that these shapes here, let me see if I can illustrate that. So here we have these shapes that come out. So we see this is the half shape. So I produce 1 times the 4 pins, and then I produce these 4-layer shapes. So if I cut them again and rotate them in the right direction, I end up with the same shape, which I can then feed into the system again, being stacked again on this here, and then come back. So they eternally rotate here around. They are never being used up. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to use one of these and produce one of these. Okay, now we have these shapes or these pins. Let's see how we can integrate them into our system. So I have set that up on another level. Let's have a look. So here we have now added an additional layer of pins. I have defined the shape which looks like this, so it knows that there is a pin on the 4th lane. So 1, 2, 3, 4th lane. There are pins which are now being fed into the system together with the other shapes. So we have on the other shapes, we have the square on lane number 2. We have the star on lane number 1. There's no circle. There's no wedge. There are stars on lane number 1 and 3, 1 and 3. So that's just the same as previously. So these 5 are now being fed into the system here. Now what happens here is there is a slight change to the coloring, because the concern is that the pin is being shown as a color null. So it doesn't have actually a color. It's not gray or any other color, so it's null. So we needed to add an additional check here. We basically check, is the color of the shape gray or is it null? If it's gray, means there's a shape but it's gray, so it can bypass the coloring, it will not be colored. But if it is null, it means it is a pin or something else, but not a shape, so it's a pin, so it should also not be colored. So it will bypass the coloring process too. Only if there is a color here, like in this one particular case, this is blue. So it checks here, is it gray? No. Is it null? No. So it's neither nor. So it will basically say, okay, you go for coloring, and this one, you see it's being colored blue here, while all the other threes are being bypassed and they arrive here. So now we end up with the 4 shapes. So it is star, square, star, pin. Do I have the shape here somewhere full to look at it? I don't have it set up here. So star, square, star, pin. So that's exactly what it is. Blue, gray, gray, no color. So we have the elements in the right order on the right lane. They are being put in here, they are being assembled, then they are being put together, and they end up right here being output in the right shape. So exactly like we saw in previous video, which you can go back to. So we end up with a shape of the right form. So exactly what we wanted. So the question now is, how do we do this in a multi-layer? For that, let me go into my main game, which I am currently streaming and playing. So this is my MAM, and it is currently set up in my main game. So please take into consideration that the pins have not yet been implemented on this one. I've just added one here for showing. I will need to do that in my next stream. So here basically the idea is of having an additional layer with pins. Now the easiest part of a 4-layer or 5-layer color, I just add the pins on every single lane here. I will add a loading track or an unloading track, connect it to my 5-layer, and there we go. I just need now, and I will do that later, to adjust here the filtering of the colors, and the rest will stay all the same. Now the final question is, how do I stack them? I start basically with, this is layer number 1. So if there's only one layer, he will produce that actually here and this one. So if there's only one layer, he will produce it here. If there's 2 layers, he will produce here, and so on and so forth. So at the end of this production here, when the final shape is ready, and here there are some, I basically check on my shapes, is there a layer number 2? So he will basically check here, is there a layer number 2? So he will, this is channel number 2. So he checks on channel number 2, is there a shape? Is it null? No. So if it is not null, that means there's a shape. So he basically sends it into the stacker because he knows there's a shape coming in. And then he will stack it. Now on the previous one, he will do the same. So on layer number 2, he will check on layer number 3. Is there a shape coming in? Yes. If yes, then he knows he needs to stack it. And the same on the next one, and the same on the next one. So eventually, if we have 5 layers, he will know there's a second layer, he will know there's a third layer, he knows there's a 4th layer, he knows there's a 5th layer. So he will basically stack, and then he will go here, be stacked again, stacked again, stacked again, and we end up here at the end of the day with a shape of 5 layers. So eventually what you just need to do then in this whole setup, which I've seen in a previous stream and videos, you just add a layer of pins, what I will be doing this afternoon. And there you go. You now have a 5-layer colored shape with pins. And the next step is going to be adding the crystals, which I will eventually do in my next video. So small disclaimer, this MAM or any MAM I've been building currently did not have as a purpose to be fast and efficient, but needed to be a proof of concept how it is being done, give you the means of thinking this through and doing it yourself, and then optimizing it, which is also a great part of the fun. Anyways, I hope to see you in the next video. Till then, don't hesitate to join onto my Twitch stream. Have fun. Cheers. See you.